Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? This is Freddie Ewan, three-time Jam of the Year, 2022 Pantheon Cup champion, 2023 regular season champion, the 2024 Pantheon Cup runner-up, and of course, the host of that fantasy football show with Freddie Ewan. It is Monday, August 3rd. I hope everyone is pumped up. Football season is coming around the corner. I am again super excited. The show's on, baby. We had Rich Michelli on the other day, the commissioner of the TPFFKL, great commissioner. Had a great time with him. Tomorrow night, we are going to have the Don of fantasy football, Mike Dang, one of the best guests we ever had. Dang is a smart guy, knows his fantasy football, great conversationalist. Guy's in real estate. He's from Jersey, sales, fits right in with me. Really good guy, but really diehard fantasy football fan. We are putting a league together. Did kind of a prototype league for a couple years about a no limit fantasy football league. Pretty much put all the pieces together to really make this a great opportunity and a really fun league. If you want to see, I posted in ending out last season, a couple of things that were wrong with this league that we were in, and they're long, but you can really see. And tomorrow you'll really see the changes that we made. The great thing about this fantasy football league that we're putting together is one of the things that I didn't see, which I really wanted to see, was um, everyone is going to have an opportunity based on you could spend $400, you can spend $4,000. If your team exceeds expectations, you will have a very good chance at a return of investment, which you did not quite see in just a free for all, no limit fantasy football league, where just the guys who were just spending the most money were usually the ones that were going to be on the top. There were keepers in this one league, which actually helped a couple of the guys, but you could see that if you spend a lot of money, you were going to win. If you didn't spend any money, you weren't going to win anything. Um, and what you see now is in this league, you're really going to have a great chance at a return on investment, which is really something that we were trying to do and put together. What we're going to do today, though, is I've talked to commissioners all over the place for the last few weeks in chat groups, on the phone, meetings, whatnot, and someone asked me to do this. Thought it'd be a little bit different for the show. Is put together the ultimate commissioner's playbook on how to be a good fantasy football commissioner. And from talking to these commissioners and whatnot and getting these free-flowing ideas, it helped me. I'm a commissioner in a couple leagues. It helped me understand a couple things where, wow, I can be doing a lot better. And there's a couple things where I've seen in the past where commissioners have made mistakes, intentional or not, they've made mistakes. Usually, 100% of the time, the commissioner is also the GM of the team. Um, and you got to be careful with that too. So, the commissioner's job is always just to keep the league fun and to keep order within. That should be the sole job of the commissioner. So here's how you do it. I'm going to share this commissioner's playbook right here. Let me see if I can share my screen with you guys. Yes, here it is. This is the ultimate commissioner's playbook. We got a new logo too, the Fantasy Football Show with Freddie. That's just one of our logos. But if it's a $50 league, if it's a $12,000 league, $13,000 league, things are going to be a lot different. Democracy, most important thing. If you're having a league, all the GMs that are paying, they all got to vote. This is everyone's league. That's what I always say to everybody when I run the league. For my league, everyone gets a vote. Everyone has an influence. We all decide. I might not agree with certain things. I have one vote, just like the other ones vote. If it's a tiebreaker vote, which it's usually not, then the commissioner can kind of hold it in. But when there's a commissioner that's just making up all the rules, no one gets a vote, but they're paying all the money, usually doesn't work that way. Usually doesn't work out too well. Let me see if I can just zoom in here, guys. Stay fair, stay firm, rules over feelings. You're using a lot of fantasy football leagues too. It's friends or friends of friends. You just guy, you might not know this one guy over here. There might be a dispute between the two guys, and you might be buddies with this guy. It happens all the time. It's like here I am, 48 years old, talking like children here, but it happens all the time. Very good to make non-emotional decisions if you're a commissioner in fantasy football. Know your league stakes. If it's a $100 league, it's going to be a lot different than a $12,000 league. Small leagues, informal, consistent, mid stakes, written rule book, high stakes needs like a formal governing, keep an eye on, et cetera, et cetera. A couple things down here. I've made this mistake a bunch of times. Collect the entry fees before the draft, no exceptions. if you are the commissioner, you let somebody draft without paying the money, they do not pay the money. You have to be responsible for that money at the end of the year. It's happened to me before. I'm sure it's happened to every commissioner. Less as I get older, but very important. No midseason rule changes, period. There are exceptions to this when I was thinking about that. A lot of these commissioners who I talked to said no mid rule, no clarifications, no exceptions. There are a couple things, one thing I can think of was a couple years ago when Damar Hamlin had the heart attack during the Bengals Bills game. I think it was like 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And I remember that game. It was the last game of the championship week where there were a lot of championship teams playing, and there were a lot of guys, both on the Bills and Bengals that were on championship lineups, and that really had to be figured out. Um, that's sometimes when you need to make an exception for these. This is a huge one. This is, so easy, but seems so hard. Keep politics, hot button topics out of the league, whatnot. It's this really didn't happen 15 years ago, where people were naming their teams after, politicians or political things, but you see it a lot lately. It's been happening a lot where people are naming different things after different politicians and whatnot. I'm not a very political person, and I really try to keep my politics to myself when I can. But I've seen sometimes where you see a league that's filled with like lots of those political names. People aren't always going to agree with, with politics. Like if you're going to put something in, there's probably going to be someone in a group of 12 guys that's going to disagree with you. And then when you start chatting about it and whatnot, there's probably some guy that's going to speak up and say something about it. So when you start with those, naming your team after a political name or whatnot, you're going to see, you're going to see tension and turmoil sometimes, which you can really avoid. Fantasy football is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be about politics, which I don't get it. But if you're the commissioner of a league like that, the first thing I do is, and I know we had Rich on the RNA, is we don't let, you're not allowed to name your team after anything political. There's no political talk in the chats, whatnot. If you're a commissioner, you might have your own political opinion, but if there's one guy who's saying something and the guy, that is not your job, especially in a league where you're commissioning to get involved. Just avoid it at the top. I mean, that's really that easy. Um, Roster integrity, defunct teams. I mean, this really goes without saying. Enforce full rosters weekly has to be done. I'm pretty sure I have to look at it a little bit more, but I'm pretty sure on ESPN that there is some AI thing now where they will put a roster in for you at the last minute. I think only the commissioners can activate it, which is kind of cool. And that might help out. But really what I do as the commissioner and what every commissioner should do is, Sunday morning, you know, look at the lineups, see if someone's missing a player or whatnot. Reach out to them, say, "Hey man, you forgot to put a tight end. You need a defense." Blah 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 blah. They usually respond instantly. "Oh yeah, I forgot. Let me put it in right now." It takes 2 minutes. If you're not getting, if the GM's not getting back to you, if the lineup is incomplete, GM's not getting back to you, there comes a time where you're gonna have to take over a defunct team. I have an example of that I'm gonna get to later in this show, but um, always sucks. Um, the other thing is empower the GMs to flag incomplete lineups. If a GM is playing another GM and they see that, he doesn't have a complete lineup in, you want to win a fantasy game, but it's like I always think, don't you want to win it fair? Don't you like, don't, I there's a lot of money in this too. I can see sometimes where some guy doesn't start this guy, sometimes doesn't start guy, but trust me, it feels so much better. I see this. I play a lot of poker and I play poker online a lot. And I see sometimes someone get disconnected at like a pivotal point in a poker tournament or something. And I'm always like, there's nothing you can do. But I'm always like, God, this is not a good win when you're just taking this guy's blinds. It's not something that excites me. I love to compete. I'm a competitor. I love to compete even when there's money on the line. This is so it's a GM, it's the GM's job to, reach out and say, hey, so and so doesn't have a complete lineup. Draft day contingency plan. This is huge. This is a mistake probably everyone's made. I guarantee you, if you're in 4 or 5 leagues this year, there's going to be a no-show. There's going to be a no-show somewhere. He's going to be set on auto draft. Like I said, I don't know how the AI is on auto draft, but auto draft before in a lot of leagues is shit. When a team has to auto draft, forget it. Their team sucks. Period. It's over. It turns into shit because three teams are getting two free wins against this guy while the other one's getting one. It just makes, especially if it's expensive league, it just makes for a very bad start. I always try to find one guy who is not in the league and just say, hey man, can you just stay on standby? It's probably not going to happen, but if somebody doesn't show up, can you just hop in and draft for the team really quick? And usually it's probably easy, it's very easy to find a guy that says, yeah, sure, no problem, I'll draft for the team. Hops in, does it. Always good to have a guy on standby. Always good because I guarantee you somewhere someone is not going to show up. It's going to be an all draft. The team's going to be shit. Hopefully, AI can change that. Oh, trade transparency dispute protocol, trades. So collusion rarely happens in fantasy football. It rarely happens. Most leagues are friends are friends. I'm in 5 or 6 fantasy football leagues. There's one league that I've been in for 5 years where I know the guys. Most of these guys I know extremely well. They're my buddies. They're my boys. They're the TPFFKL. You know, um, but most of the time, you're gonna see guys who don't know guys, don't so collusion rarely happens. But if somebody thinks collusion, if there's anyone that thinks collusion, then they should be able to reach out to the commissioner publicly or privately. Hey, I think this trade is collusion. Don't get that confused with one team trading to another team, it looks lopsided to you. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is collusion. I don't like this trade. The guy who's in second place, and a game ahead of me, he just got the better of this other guy. Two GMs make a trade. When they agree on it, the only question you have to ask is collusion, whether you don't like the trade or not. I'm going to get to another example of that in just a second. Um, Here we go. A couple examples. Put this together once again with a lot of GMs. Different stories on everyone. This is a trade that happened a few years ago. Here's a trade that happened. Was a GM that was at the top of the standings traded for Christian McCaffrey. A guy sent him a trade with a bunch of boomer bust players. The one guy was at lower in the standings, who was trading McCaffrey away to the guy who was higher in the standings. The trade was pretty lopsided on paper, to tell you the truth. It was lopsided on paper. The GM, who was not high in the standings, basically wanted to get rid of CMC because he had a bye week, hit a couple other guys on bye week, saying he wanted these non-bye week players so he can make a run over the next few weeks. Hey, all right. So these two GMs, it was clear that they did not know each other. It was clear that they did not know each other. It was clear that there was no collusion whatsoever. All right. The commissioner of the league, who's in the running, I think, for the top two, gets on, announces the trade, and puts in big letters like vote collusion. I vote collusion. And of course, people are like, I don't agree with the trade. I don't agree with the trade. There was a guy who was in second place who even he said something along the lines of, I know you guys don't know each other, but this makes your team a lot better. So I voted collusion. And I mean, it's like, it was really spurred by the commissioner too, saying, I don't like this trade, I vote collusion, and having a bunch of his pack rats followed almost. So, really, what should have happened is the commissioner should have asked one question: is there any evidence of this GM colluded? He should announce the trade. He should announce that I know these two guys don't know each other. Um, you know, both of the guys have talked to me. They said to me, one guy gave me the reason for making the trade. The other guy just hit accept on the trade. It does not, here's the facts. They don't know each other. It's a lopsided trade. Vote. But he voted, oh, this is collusion. In the meantime, same commissioner, he's made a lot of trades, questionable trades sometimes, where, he's up there and the guy's in lower place. And like I said, commissioner usually knows all the guys in a league. Some guys in the league don't know other guys. The commissioner usually knows all the guys. Usually, maybe one or two he doesn't, but most he knows. So that's very hard. Other thing, when you're a commissioner and you're making a trade, someone else has to be assigned on accepting that trade, hearing anyone out, whether they think it's collusion or not. Very simple. Once again, most trades are not collusion. There are times when it does happen, but most trades are not collusion. Okay, another situation. This is a situation a buddy of mine told me about was, late in the season last year, big league, $15,000 league, team in the playoffs and whatnot. There was a playoff race. One guy who was at the bottom of the standings had a bunch of guys on bye week, did not have an incomplete lineup. Incomplete lineup. Um, Commissioner did not look ahead of time to see if everyone had a complete lineup. This guy was missing 6 or 7 players. Really, really, really big hole. Guy who he was playing, who was in the playoff race, didn't say anything. No one said anything. It went completely unnoticed until the week was over. Crazy in a $15,000 league. Crazy that no one picked up or no one said anything and noticed that. A couple guys got on the text and they started saying, "Hey, this is screwed up. This guy got a free playoff win. I'm battling for it right here." The guy who was in the guy who did not set his lineup almost immediately got in the chat. He said, I didn't, it was not on purpose. It was not on purpose. Probably a little bit later, he said, "Hey, look, I had a tragedy, blah, 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 blah." And hey, if anyone knows me, I've had plenty of tragedies the last few years, a ton of tragedies. If anyone knows me personally and the tragedies that I went through over the past couple of years. And that's understandable, man. I always think that it only takes a couple minutes to set a fantasy football team. You have a week to do it, but there's more to life than fantasy football, especially deaths in the family or whatnot, because I've been through that before. Um, horrible things before. That's completely understandable. At the same time, and I love this word right here, at the same time, after this was done, what the commissioner pretty much said is if you paid for your team and you don't want to field a complete lineup that's competitive, that's completely up to you. And it was almost that more people felt bad that the guy had a tragedy, sure, but at the same time, we're still in a $15,000 league. Compassion for a GM's personal situation and accountability for competitive integrity in a league are two completely different things. Really easy. A great commissioner could have realized that and handled both. Um, and if you endorse, hey, you don't have to come complete lineup. I'm going to talk to Dang about this tomorrow too, because we were on the phone earlier and he said to me something along the lines, it's like, I am really hard as a commissioner if you don't have a full team in. But if you say something like if you don't want to put a lineup, I love this word. It enables passive collusion, and it really does. And it's funny because the lineups that are never set at the end of the year, they're never the teams that are vying for the playoffs or vying to get money. It's always the teams that are out of the playoffs and, out of the money. And sometimes I think that there's ways, I wish that could be different, but if your team's out of the playoffs, it's like, you still got to field the complete lineup, tragedy or not, those things happen. Um, but it could have been avoided very easily if this commissioner had just looked at the league on a Saturday night, Sunday morning. And the fact that no one in this league even looked at it or said anything, it was shocking to me. It was just really shocking. But on to the next one. Here's a commissioner who got it right. All right. So draft day a few years ago, someone was telling me about this. This GM decided to bail. Highly competitive league. Last minute, GM decided I'm not gonna play in it. Had to find an hour, 2 hours before the draft. Had to find a replacement GM. He finally found one. Another GM a few days later, said, "Hey, I'm going to take this guy, who didn't show up and bailed on everybody to be my co-GM." And there were a lot of league people that were upset with this. They were upset. And this guy was a friend of everybody's. He knew everybody. This is what these guys were telling me, that he was a buddy and everything. But the commissioner stood fat. He said, "Hey, look, you didn't show up to the draft. You had your chance for the own team. You can't go and be a co-GM on someone else's team now. Come on." I mean, that doesn't make sense. But it was a tough decision for this commissioner when he was telling me this, because these guys were really good friends and they really knew each other. But this guy really bailing on draft day and then a week later saying, "Hey, I'm just going to play with," come on. And, but tough job by the commissioner. Commissioners have to make tough choices. What Rich Michelli said yesterday was interesting. He said everything is based on fun, even though I called him softy. Commissioner who kept a save space. So, all right. So this is just another one. So anyway, at the beginning of the year, someone made some kind of political comment. There was another guy who got in there arguing about some kind of politics, whatnot, blah, 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 blah. He sent a private message to each one, and he said, "Hey guys, cut it with political chatter. Let's cut it out." One of the guys had his name named after, I don't know, some politician or whatnot, and he asked him to change his name. He said, "Look, man, everybody, this is fantasy football. Let's, kind of just keep it PC as far as like what your name is concerned. If you want to name your team the Don Keyes, that's fine. That doesn't offend anybody." But you see what it is. But anyway, commissioner got involved. Make sure, hey, we're gonna keep this fantasy football related. Worked out great. This was crazy. All right, so this was crazy. Another good job by our commissioner. This is a few weeks ago in one league. Is this guy was this GM was just start talking about how anyone who watches football, it's destroying brains through CTE, and that the World Cup soccer is going to bring world peace. He's talking to a guy in the fantasy football league. It's a fantasy football league, and just nonstop. Like if you're a football fan, you're going down the wrong way, just crazy stuff. And this is a fantasy football league chat, and this guy was in the fantasy football league previously. So basically the guy deleted him from the chat. I don't know whether this guy's going to be playing or not, but we're going to find out soon enough. Going to the end here, keep the league alive, weekly commissioner content. Always great. I try to send out a text every week just to let everyone know so and so one, so and so one, so and so one. Break down the playoffs. If you have a weekly file to distribute, my man J Dot has great weekly files to distribute. I got one of his. It's always good to send that out with an email, highlight the performance, highlight storylines. Keep it going, man. If you're a commissioner, keep it going. Keep it going. There's some commissioners that just put in, if they just have this league and nothing happens, they never say anything. Keep it, it is your job as the commissioner to keep everyone engaged and active. It is really that easy. And you have to do that. If you're too busy to be a commissioner, don't be one. But engaging, getting people involved is key to a fun fantasy football league. Consistency is the key. The leagues people remember aren't just the ones with the biggest prize pool. They're the ones where the commissioner made everyone feel like they were part of something special. I love that. Lastly, I'm going to put this dedicated to my father. God bless you, Dad. Rest in peace. Uh, Miss him every single day. That is a cartoon picture of me and him. I have my Michael Vick, Hide Your Beagles, Here Come the Eagles. That was taken at Tampa Bay during a playoff game, probably about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. Um, Missed the man in death. So yeah, everything is dedicated to him and the memories I shared with him. So I hope you're watching Dad and I'm making you proud. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for watching and putting up with me and listening to me forever how long this is. Tomorrow night it's gonna be a lot funner. I can promise you Mike Dang is gonna be here. If you want the commissioner's playbook, do not forget to subscribe. I will make sure I will send this on over to you. I'll put a link in the bottom. Check it out. Check the playbook out. Once again, we have a couple leagues that are available. Guillotine League, I think there's one left. It's $100. No Limit Fantasy Football League, I think there's 3 or 4 spots left. $400 minimum. You can spend as much as you want. And we have a Super Flex League, $250. We're looking for one spot. I think that one might have been filled today. I'm not sure though. But anyway, if you're interested in playing some leagues, give me a shout out. Let me know. We'll be glad to have you. And so we get a fun year, baby. You're going to get more into fantasy football. I have my guide that I'm going to do soon on how to win the fantasy football championship this year. For the last 5 years, I have won a fantasy football championship, baby, after never winning a fantasy football championship before that. So I am hot. So read the guide. Everyone have a great night. Thank you so much.